Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad. I'm sitting down with Keith Myers, co-host Keith Myers, as usual. We're here to talk Seahawks football. We've got a draft prospect series show for you today, looking at the wide receiver class, prospects that are going to be available in the NFL draft in April. Depending on, if you look at our own receiver room, Keith, depending on what they do with Tyler Lockett, we could see a need to really add to this wide receiver room. I would imagine they'd take a look in free agency. Don't know if they completely solve that room before the draft, but there's a lot of intriguing players available at depth in this draft that I think Seattle could come away with a player that it could at least step in and become or compete for that number 3 overall spot on the roster. And you want to develop a guy too, potentially. Maybe they take one or add a couple of pieces to that room this offseason in lieu of DK Metcalf's contract situation and position on this team going forward. A lot of speculation that he's, they would be available. He would be available should the right offer come along. I don't see that. I see him being a weapon that they'd like to be able to use in this offense. Even Tyler Lockett, if he was to come back at a different number, he could potentially be a guy that you would like to have in the locker room, in addition to some on the field production, as long as his number and value match up. Welcome in, Keith. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. So, you go through and you look at the roster, right. You mentioned we have Metcalf and Smith and Jigba as kind of the 1-2 punch. Tyler Lockett's there, but his cap number of almost 31 million for a guy who's had decreasing production over the last 3 years. He's not gonna stay on that. And then after that, that's kind of Tariq Young has never really proven to do anything other than be a special teams player. Jake Bobo seems to have a fairly low ceiling. Granted, he's one of those hardworking guys for special teams and blocking downfield and that kind of stuff, and you can depend on him for a few catches, but he's not a guy that is going to be dynamic and add a lot to your offense. And the only other person on the roster is Cornell Powell, who honestly I don't even know who that is. And they'll add some other guys and some younger guys, but we're talking there's just not a lot here to work with. You got basically Metcalf and JSN. They need at least one receiver in this offseason. And the draft is the best way to go and get receivers. And so I could definitely see this being a year in which they draft one, and they draft one, higher than most people think.
I agree. I totally agree with everything you said. The only name I would add to your pile there of Seattle guys is Cody White. I think they've re-signed him to a futures contract. He kind of showed just a little bit. He plays hard. He's a hard worker. He's been around the practice squad for 3 years. This would be his 4th season, kind of trying to make that active roster. Shows a little bit of upside. Big-bodied wide receiver with a little bit of speed. Just hasn't been able to make it onto the roster full time. Depends on how the new new coaching staff and scheme fit would align with him and his skill set. We'll see. And then in free agency, there's a number of guys available. The trade market is out there and somewhat active. Players are being released. There's a talk of even Deebo Samuel being released or on the trade market. Cooper Kupp, etc. So, there's a lot of options. Seattle doesn't have a lot of money to play with in free agency. Even if they create the cap, they've got serious priorities that they've got to kind of align with as well. And you kind of mix that around with the draft. And so John Schneider's got a big job ahead of him with that respect. But the wide receiver class itself, which is what we're here to talk about, is intriguing. And you'd mentioned the idea potentially of Seattle taking a wide receiver earlier than people expect. And I would even argue you could conceivably see them take a wide receiver at 18 or even a drop back to, let's say, the 25 range. You could see them take one because that's one of those positional value things that align at that position in the draft
Yep.
where they may be thinking ahead to the DK Metcalf to the team. And we don't know this for sure, speculation wise. They could be thinking, okay, we're going to move off of DK Metcalf, just doesn't provide enough return. Maybe we can trade him and get some value out of him in the draft. We'd need a couple wide receivers to add to this room. Maybe we'll take care of one in free agency, but the draft is going to be hyper important. We're going to take one early. We've identified 2 or 3 guys that we know are going to be available in our range, and any one of those would work with what we want to do. It's entirely possible. And there's a couple of good prospects in that range, and I think we should talk about them. I mean, obviously, the first one is McMillan. He's going to go off the board early. I think he's probably definitely a top 10 prospect. The 6'5", 212-pound Arizona Wildcat. He's got 4.5 speed, but he's young, so not great speed, but just super productive over a couple of seasons. He's kind of like that surefire bet wide receiver in this
at
class.
6'5", he presents major matchup challenges. And for a guy that tall, is quick enough to get open in short space. Like, he creates a little bit of separation, great hands. He reminds me a lot of Evans, the wide receiver down in Tampa, that just tied Jerry Rice's record for most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. So, yeah, I mean, this is a guy he's going to go top 10. I would be surprised if he did, unless he goes to the combine and really runs like a 4.6, and everyone's like, maybe he's too slow, and then he'll drop a little bit. But I don't see that happening. And yeah, he's going to be a top 10.
Yeah, if he can touch 4.4 speed, 4.48, something like that, he's a lock at kind of a top 5 guy. Where it gets interesting for me is after him. There's a few names here that I really like, and when you watch them on tape, you can kind of feel like Seattle could bring in any one of these guys that, the next 4 guys that we're going to talk about, that could fit kind of that Tyler Lockett replacement thing. Now, I don't know exactly what they're looking for in this scheme. Do they want another DK Metcalf to stretch the field? Do they want another underneath guy that is scheme diverse, that can do a lot of different things? I think that's probably more like what they really want, at least immediately. Now, a developmental prospect later in the draft that has some upside to be an X receiver to stretch the field out. Yeah, I could see that for sure. But a guy that can kind of do it all and be a possession guy, good hands, great route runner, has some speed, could do some things for you in the screen game, but also just move the chains, sort of like Njigba does, for the team right now. You could use another weapon like that on the team.
Sort of like
Luther
Tyler
Burden.
Lockett's done for most of his career. Although Tyler Lockett, because he was so good at catching the ball through contact,
yes,
when he was younger, also made for
yes.
a great deep threat too. So
yeah, I agree. Now, a guy like Luther Burden, for me, is probably the next guy up, and he would be around that 18 guy overall in the draft, 5'11", 208. The nice thing about him, even though you think 5'11", 208, he's on the small side. Well, not really. He's about average for a wide receiver in the NFL. He's proportionally sized, so he doesn't look slight. He's well built, thick through the middle and upper body. 4.41 speed. He's young. He's 21 years old. I like him. When you watch him, he does everything really well, gets out in his routes, breaks are clean, makes it easy for his quarterback. At Missouri, they didn't throw the ball deep very often, so he was used underneath quite a bit. That scheme and the quarterback they had limited him, which I think his ceiling is even higher than what he showed in college, Keith.
Yeah. I mean, he is a guy that because of as you said, because the offense didn't get as many looks as some of these other guys that were in pass happy offenses, but he still jumped off the tape. I mean, Missouri is not that good of a team, and you go to watch and you're like, oh, this guy's always open. He's just always open. Doesn't matter, man, zone, he's always open. Um, and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
might not be that elite deep threat, but I don't care.
Right. And but he
I
could
like his
be.
game.
They just didn't have a quarterback that could throw the ball over 25 yards. They just didn't. And so you don't know for sure if he can do that. I would imagine that they can figure that out in scouting and so forth and at the combine. And um, I would imagine he'd have opportunities just because he's a great route runner. He can get loose from coverage, and you mentioned always being open. Yards after
Hmm.
the catch for this guy is elite, and so I would imagine he's going to test really well at the combine as far as agility is
Oh
concerned.
yeah.
And so um, for me, if Seattle went wide receiver and they went with a guy like Burden early, I would at least know that the value lines up with the pick and it's going to provide instant value on the field for the team. And I don't know what else you could ask for at that spot in the draft, really.
Well, you could ask for the next guy on our list because I actually, if they're gonna go wide receiver early, the
Mm,
guy that I would want them to target is Emeka Egbuka, out of the wide receiver out of
Egbuka.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
Is it what?
Tremendous prospect.
Yeah,
Ibuka. Yeah.
Ibuka.
Egbuka.
Egg yeah, it's EG. So it's
Egbuka.
like, um, but anyways, he's 6'1", so he's about 2 inches taller than Burden. Runs a 4.3 40. He's one of the
Hmm.
elite speed prospects in this game. This guy adds this element that he adds that element of um, you know the deep threat
Yes.
already. But then you go and you watch his tape and he catches the ball really well with his hands, never lets it get into on his body. Um, is a guy that runs a fairly impressive route tree for a college player, meaning he can run. There's lots of different routes in which he wins on. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just he's a really strong prospect with a lot of speed, and he's actually kind of savvy in terms of his routes. Like does some of the veteran things that you see in the NFL, guys that vary their speed, um, at times in order to set people up, making sure that he makes his cuts when when the cornerback's weight is on the wrong foot and that kind of stuff. Um, and so it's um, I just think he's going to be a really good player, and it's just going to
I do
be
too.
yet another first round Ohio State wide receiver. They've had just this like assembly line of them the last like 5 years, and one of them being Smith and Jigba. But now so you're going to add another player who's from that that system, but um,
What did you think?
yeah.
Just a side conversation. What did you think of
Mhm.
Howard in his ability to get the ball out to him? Just kind of from a quarterback perspective.
I saw um, a lot of pre-designed um, throws, meaning that there was one person who
Wide
the ball's
open
going
throws.
to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's one person who the ball's going to, and it doesn't matter, what the defense does because the way they've got all the routes and stuff figured out, like the guy's gonna be open, and so there's no reading of it. But the ball came out of his hands fairly nice. It was catchable. It was accurate. So
A lot
there's
of
a lot to
catchable
like there.
balls. Yeah.
But I don't know about his ability to actually go out and read a defense,
I know.
and get the
It
ball out of his
reinforced
hands in
my
3 seconds.
idea of what he was as a prospect. Although it didn't
Hmm.
hurt him. Like it
No,
didn't, you know what I mean? It's like he
yeah,
still made all the throws. He made all the, you mentioned, predetermined routes and all that kind of stuff. I agree a little bit, but there was still some reads where he came off receivers and went a different direction. I saw. I think though I think you're right on Egbuka being ahead of Burden a little bit in a number of key areas. And again, the what was reinforced for me was the Ohio State scheme and just how much better they were at everyone. Like
Mm-hmm.
for an example, when you watch Missouri play, and we just talked about their receiver being a guy that we don't know for sure if he's going to be able to take the top off of defense, all that kind of stuff. He just didn't have those opportunities. At Ohio State, you could see those opportunities clearly on the field. They did push the ball down the field quite a bit. Ibuka was one of those recipients that was able to take advantage of that. When they ran bubble screens and other screens, there were yards and yards of free space available for him to run before
Mm-hmm.
contact or even before he had to make a move. It was just a completely different level of talent that was on the field. And so it's hard to measure a player accurately without being an advanced scout that you've gone through years watching this player develop to know for sure if it's scheme or if it's on the field talent or a combo or whatever. Because Ohio State was just so much better than almost everyone they lined up against.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, like, you kind of have to evaluate what's there. And wide receiver is one of those positions that I think is easier to do that and separate player from production because with wide receiver, not with other things. Because a guy has to be able to get open, and if he's getting open, and doing those things, and then you watch it how he catches the ball, and does he let
Yeah,
it
but
come into his body or
they had five elite weapons players out in routes, including running backs, on every play.
yeah.
Plus a quarterback that could just get the ball get the ball accurately to a player that was wide open. So it was, pick your poison on defense when you play Ohio State for sure.
Mm-hmm. Um,
Anyway,
yeah. So I guess I tend to I tended to look at quarterbacks and running backs as more dependent on the talent around them. With wide receivers, if you're watching the tape, it's can they get open on their own? And Egbuka could, and that's really why I think he's there. The consensus boards tend to have Burden higher, which I don't have a problem with. I think that he's much more polished, and he's going to get open on every play. Where Egbuka is going to be spending a lot of his time, running go routes and that kind of stuff early in his career. So I could see Burden being higher, but honestly, you've already got JSN. I'd love to see them go and get Egbuka and get a guy that can take the top off of defense for sure because of that elite speed and just he provides so much to your offense in terms of his other abilities that I think that it's worth making that trade off and and and
go for
going
the
that route.
ceiling rather than the high floor.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
How
but
about
that's me. That's a personal thing.
your next prospect?
Well, so the next prospect down the list would be Matthew Golden out of Texas, and this was an interesting look for me, trying to figure out like what do you do with a guy like this because he's it looks like 6 foot 4.35. All right, this guy's going to have it there, but then you kind of watch and he doesn't get off the line very well against a jam. He's really thin, despite the fact that I think he's 195.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So he looks really thin.
I thought he looked average. I didn't think he looked thin,
I thought he
but
looked pretty thin,
that was just
but yeah, I mean, so there's some of that, but the speed's there. I worry about, think he's going to need bulk, but then when I look at oh, and I forgot his medical history. He's got some durability concerns, which makes sense with the if he's on the thinner side. But the thing that gave me pause about him ever ending up in Seattle was I saw him basically stand there and not block people at times. And I don't think that's going to fly in with the Seahawks. Like that's going to be something that they're just not going to um,
Well, I disagree with you a
allow.
little bit. Now, for me, it was a technique and a coaching issue rather than a desire to actually be able to do it and the physical ability to do it because those things are there. I saw a little bit of a different guy on tape. Big playability stood out to me. Like this guy was always making big plays, converting third downs for big time yardage. Also offers some kick return ability, which is at an elite level. Scored a couple touchdowns at the college level. 4.38 speed. Okay, so he's got that speed. Now you mentioned separation off the line. Yeah, I agree. It's not a juking kind of a guy. He's more of a long speed guy. So
Hmm.
he's a guy that you would have on your roster to kind of take the top off, but he's only 6 foot. So there's some limitations there. I would say, as far as a guy that is physical in his route running and contested catches and so forth and hand usage, he's a guy that you definitely want on your team as far as just being competitive and physical. So I think the blocking stuff is there. I just think it wasn't a priority for him.
Okay, well then, if you go, let's go down to the next prospect and hit his teammate, which is Isaiah Bond. This guy's
Hmm.
really slight at only 180 pounds,
Yeah,
5'11", but 4.28 speed. This guy is going to
unreal.
probably be the fastest guy at the
Just
combine.
turned 20 years old as well.
Yeah. And when I was watching the tape, I didn't see those plays where he was standing there watching the running play. This guy blocked a lot more willingly, even though he's significantly smaller and um,
Hmm.
yeah, and so
Yeah,
just he
and
doesn't
he
have the
worked the
bulk.
middle. He worked the middle consistently too, so that he was getting hit, banged, rubbed, pushed, shoved all the time.
Hmm.
So yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, he's small overall, 5'11", 180, but he's proportional. So when you look at him, he looks like he's not slight. He's
Hmm.
filled out. He's just small. But 4.8 speed, and he just turned 20. He's
Yep.
Ewers was throwing to him. Legitimate burner, yards after catch guy, gadget guy. I saw some plays where he was taking some things out of the backfield, screens, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you'd use him over the top. He's just not, he doesn't have that physical profile where I don't know that he would. I mean, once in a while he would do.
Hmm.
I think that the whole Tyler Lockett thing, when you can catch the ball down the field, and he's got that ability. He's way more jukey than Golden, but um, I'm not sure that, because they just didn't use him that way. Golden was their guy that they used over the top and
Yeah.
gave them the opportunities for contested catches, all that kind of stuff. He was used more underneath, out of the slot, in screens, gadgety. I imagine he can return some punts and kicks. That would be an interesting pick, but I don't know where you take him in the draft. He's got second round written all over him, right? But I'm not sure I would want to draft Isaiah Bond in the second round.
See, I was thinking third round. This is a guy that if he's still sitting there at 82, then you take him there,
I don't
because
know, Keith. I mean, I think I've got him rated as like the fifth or sixth wide receiver on the board, and that
hmm
those guys are going to go in the second round. But
yeah,
that's just me.
probably. I was just thinking more in terms of like where I would take a guy with his skill set and size and that kind of stuff because that 180 pounds is going to scare some teams off. Because he's
Totally.
not 203 or whatever. Um, but the Seahawks desperately need a kick returner, and that kind of speed, that kind of size, his ability um, change directions and change speeds in a step. His acceleration is just crazy. And so his ability to do those kind of things, I think, would make him a great kick returner. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I, uh, those kind of skill set, and but that speed is just crazy elite. Basically, he would be Tyler Lockett, but with slightly better speed and not nearly as good of ability to catch the ball through contact the way Lockett's elite at that. So it's not a fair comparison. But
And
um,
and and Lockett, while he turned out really good, he developed that, after a couple of years watching Doug Baldwin
oh yeah.
in the offense, and he kind of developed that. I mean, he was a better wide receiver than given credit for coming out of
Mm-hmm.
college, Kansas State, but
Yep.
I think he developed a little bit of that, along the way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a couple other prospects, early
Make me
prospects, and we're
miss Doug
talking,
Baldwin.
second, third round grades. Trey Harris out of Mississippi, 6'3", 210, 4.55 40. He's not going to be a speedster, but he is
He's
going to
not.
give you that physicality you're looking for on the offensive side of the ball. I saw that all over the tape. Contested catches, running into players instead of running out of bounds, all that kind of stuff. Good ball tracker, caught the ball away from his frame. You know, Mississippi State, so Ole Miss, you're going to have to develop the route tree a little bit for this guy. He's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be everything for you. You're not. There's no real multiple formation, multiple alignment usage with him. So I don't know that he would be a great fit other than a straight DK Metcalf replacement. Old DK Metcalf, like a couple of years ago, DK Metcalf, before DK Metcalf kind of had a expanded route tree.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where Trey Harris is at.
Yeah, but he doesn't have Metcalf's speed. I mean, at
Right.
4.55, he's on the
Right.
slower side.
Yeah.
Um,
Total possession
and
wide
so,
receiver.
yeah. Um, and but that's not to say like, okay, sometimes the possession wide receiver is it's like a red flag. It's like, oh, you don't want that. It's like, and some people think, oh, you're a slot receiver. Like, but there's value in being able to move the chains. I mean,
Look at your tight
Cooper
end
Cup.
group. I mean, this is kind of an extension of a tight end sort of
Yeah,
mentality.
Cooper Cup is a possession receiver. He's also, when healthy, probably the best receiver in the NFL at everything that he does. So, um, I think that, being a possession wide receiver is not necessarily a bad thing, despite what some people will tell you. I just, with him,
Agreed.
I love the way that he tracks the ball, that you never see him jump early on a contested catch. He's always right there at the right spot. Um, and, just his ability to get his hands away from his body to get them on the football and bring it in was impressive. Like
Yeah.
his catch radius is huge.
For me,
And
this was watching him was like the extra bonus was watching Jackson Dart throw the ball to him because he did such a great job putting the ball where um, only he could really catch it, Trey Harris,
hmm
and a lot of contested stuff, a lot of red zone jump, balls, and I just found that interesting that this was really Jackson Dart's favorite target
oh yeah.
for moving the chains and getting the ball down the field a little bit. It was interesting. I just found it interesting to kind of watch those two together. He's the combination of the strong hands and the size, even though that 4.55 range is typically not where Seattle has chosen their wide receivers in the past. Got a new scheme, new role definitions. We just don't know for
hmm
sure exactly what they're going to be looking for. But that consistency in the mentality, I think that Mike McDonald wants to have in his whole team. This prospect fits that as far as creating an identity for your
Yeah.
team.
So what did you think of Alec Aomar, the wide receiver out of
I like
Stanford?
him. I've always liked him. The thing about Stanford and this prospect is it's Stanford. At one point this last season, they were 2-7.
Yeah.
He's 6'2", 210, 4'4", 240. I love those size and speed combo right there.
hmm
Um, he was decently productive in 2024, 62 receptions, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, but he's with a
Still
crappy
needs to work
quarterback.
on his, crap system quarterback of all the things. You could
Yeah.
just really see it when you watched it. He didn't have a lot of space to operate. He was their best weapon, if you will, on offense, and he was still underutilized, still couldn't get the ball to him in certain situations. Fighting through that sort of a thing is difficult to evaluate
Hmm.
a player, but he's got good acceleration, strong hands, ideal size. I think for the position, can is scheme diverse, can align from a lot of different ways, at a lot of different places. Can be your X, can be in the slot. I like it. I mean, and at that speed, height, weight combo, he's a dangerous weapon you can have on the field all three downs. He could eventually work in to be your number two guy in Jigba. I wouldn't mind taking a player, especially if he was available at our 82nd pick overall in the third round. That would just
Yeah.
be a perfect fit for me.
That would be a great fit because I think he could come in and be productive right away as a number three receiver. Comes in, pushes JSN into the slot when they go to a three wide receiver set, and just do a lot of really good things. It's really hard to look at his tape because the quarterback situation was so bad. It's like it was painful trying to watch Stanford's offense. But
Yeah.
if when good things happened, it was almost always him that did the good things. And so, um, yeah, I think that's he's a good player on a bad team. And
And I think he's
um,
going to be undervalued, going into the draft. I think he's going to be an excellent value for a team that picks him. I think he goes into the combine, shows up really well against other wide receivers in his class, and his draft
mhm,
stock is going to go up a little bit. I think, it's not going to go up a lot because scouts are going to watch the tape. They're looking for affirmations at the combine, not necessarily a guy that's going to completely pop. But I think he's going to completely pop and really separate himself a little bit with his soft touch hands, his ability to catch the ball away from him, the route running, all that kind of stuff. It just depends on interviews for him and intangible things that we don't have access to. But I see him as a guy that Seattle would have on their draft board, just from a character perspective, a leadership,
yeah.
a guy that's going to come in right away and make your roster, be available on special teams, isn't afraid to put his body out there to block, does everything you want in a prospect that I would think Mike McDonald would be attracted to. Therefore, um, Kubiak would want as well.
Hmm. Next guy on I guess well, maybe I'm skipping at someone, but
It's
the
okay.
next guy that on my list that I want to talk about is one of the absolute standouts of Senior Bowl week. And that would be Jack Beck out of
Mm.
TCU. Guys he just came out and looked um like someone who is NFL ready at the Senior Bowl. Um, Kind of the similar situation as we talked about with a couple guys earlier, in that he's 6'2", 4.55", so possession receiver style. But his what you saw at the Senior Bowl was his ability to get open, to get separation from cornerbacks. Um, so a smart quarterback, he gets separation, you get him the ball. And it doesn't matter that he doesn't have the elite speed. He's going to be a chain mover for you and can line up and play kind of anywhere. Um, yeah, I mean, he's not a vertical threat, and that's kind of why he's going to drop. Probably be around in the fourth round, because he's doesn't have that super high ceiling without the elite speed. But honestly, you're going to get a lot of production out of a guy. Who, for someone picked that low, just simply because of his ability to get open regularly.
So name pronunciation correction slightly. His last name pronounced Besh, like a
Besh.
Besh, only
Oh,
it's CH, so it's Besh. I agree with everything you said. The guy's just a solid football player. When
yeah.
you're looking and you're filling out your roster, you want some playmakers, you want some guys that juke, do this, do that. Really, what it comes down to is, can they play football? Do they love football? Do they love the game? Do they have a chip on their shoulder? Do they want to continue to work and improve? And this is the guy that checks all those boxes. So outside of just, playing football between the hashes, this guy's a football player. He's going to work hard. He's going to come into your room and make everyone better. He's willing to block out on the edges for you, which is really important on that outside zone stretch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His frame can handle that. 6'2", 215. You mentioned the 4.55 40. Yeah, I don't even care about this prospect with that speed. You're getting everything else beyond the speed. And you're right, third, fourth round, I think he's fringy right in there. I think that this is a player that they would target because of that. I'd mentioned last show, I think the statistic was in the last 5 years, Seattle's drafted, I think 68% of their draft picks have been Senior Bowl prospects.
Mm-hmm.
This, to me, this is a guy that they probably interviewed at least once and will interview again in a couple different times. And we're really impressed with all the intangible stuff in Senior Bowl week. He won the most valuable player award in the game itself. I just really like his willingness to do all the things that the intangible things that you want a player to do in your offense to make everyone else successful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why they would target him. And quite frankly, he's one of my favorite players in the draft.
Yeah. He's a fun player to watch. He really is just a fun player to watch. So who's
So
your
for
next guy?
me, well, you did skip over a few guys that I wanted to talk about. A player in the similar mold would be Jalen Royals out of Utah State, 6', 205, runs a 4.38 40. He's going to do a little bit more for you, but possession style guy as far as using his body to control his environment in the NFL. So possession type stuff, contested catches, catch radius, all those things, plus the great speed makes he's probably a little higher on most people's boards. I would
Mm-hmm.
say back end of the second round, early first round grade for him. Again, Utah State, so it's not a big wide receiver school, but he's shown that he's got the body control and the ability to make plays. He was their playmaker on that
Mm-hmm.
roster, on that team. I like him. Again, there's a number of guys between the back end of the first round and the start of the fourth round that I really think are the value picks in this draft, as far as guys that are going to be able to come in and make an immediate impact, make your roster, compete for that third wide receiver spot, which is where Seattle has a need to fill potentially, and play special teams and really kind of work yourself into an opportunity to force the team to give you more opportunities as the years go on. And he'd be an ideal candidate for that.
Yeah, I like his speed. He ran a lot of vertical routes. Got down the field quickly.
Yes.
You said he was their playmaker. I
He had 7
I
touchdowns over 50 yards.
I know, isn't that crazy?
That
Uh,
is crazy.
um, but
And we
what
don't
I
have that on our roster right now. Talk about a player that would come in to fill a need, but also
mhm.
add something to your roster. That would be great.
So, my concerns were I saw him get just really blown up at the line of scrimmage by jams a few times, and I think his underneath routes, his ability to win on short, quick routes, is something that still needs to be developed because he didn't really do it in college. He just ran vertical routes all the time. Everything was down the field, which scared the crap out of defenses because he had great speed, but I'd like to see his ability to get separation quickly as there as well. And I didn't really see it on his tape much. And so we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to say, oh no, don't draft him because we just don't know. But I do think that's why he drops a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the blocking technique for him needs to, vastly improve. He's got the limited experience. He's only got 1 year of really good production, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's why he's there at that level in the draft. Even though he's got a lot of upside, you're still going to have to work with him and develop that. Jaden Higgins is a big body wide receiver that I really like, actually. 6'4", 215, 6'4", 5'40". Again, not a speedster. That's
About six
why,
four.
yeah, 6'4", but you're not going to get that body of the ability to have the scheme diversity and alignment with him. I think he's going to align outside almost full time, but still not be able to stretch that field as much because he's going to be a contested catch guy almost every time out. But he does have the body control to do that. He's physical. He's going to win those battles, but he's only going to give you a certain upside, and that's why he's available in the fourth round, or the third round. Just we'll have to see how his agility, how he tests at the combine. Like if he's got super good agility, he runs a low 4.25 short shuttle, something like that.
Yeah,
He's going to
if
be,
his three cones are right around 7 seconds or even slightly under,
yeah,
he's gonna
yes.
then he'll be fine.
He's gonna provide you a little bit more value because then the
Mhm.
middle of the field opens up for him.
Yeah. And so yeah, I look at that and I kind of watch what I got the feeling of is this is an upgraded Jake Bobo, right? He's a guy with that kind of size, but he's a little better at catching the ball. He's got a bigger catch radius, better athlete in terms of his ability to get up and box guys out and that kind of stuff. And he's got better speed. So, but he's super physical. This guy plays physical football, which Seattle wants to
Yeah,
do. And so I really
right.
liked him. Like I said, I looked at him as an upgraded Jake Bobo.
I would say that that's a decent comp, and even the speed is going to be likely in that range. I mean, Bobo timed out at 4.9 or whatever. I don't think
Yeah,
that
but
that
he
was
doesn't
accurate. I think
play
it's more
that.
close to like 4.6, something like that. This
Hmm.
guy's 4.55. I get that comp. I really do. The next guy on my list is another big body wide receiver, Savion Williams out of TCU. Now TCU struggled again to get the ball out to their receivers and so forth, but he's got some upside, like intriguing upside.
He's
Just the
six
size wise,
five.
6'5", 225. He looks like a small tight end.
Mm-hmm.
He plays that way as well, but he's got the 4.45 speed, which is intriguing because it does open up the middle of the field for you. He can stretch zone. He can be matched up. He can be a matchup issue for you. So you can move him around a little bit. He's got that ability to be scheme diverse and alignment diverse for you if you're a play caller in the NFL. So you're going to match him up if you can against linebackers and safeties as often as you can. He wins those battles. Super athletic, like he's going to do a 40 plus vertical, that sort of thing. So at that size and that speed, when you do a 40-inch vertical, you're going to win those jump balls and contested catches. You're going to be a red zone target and a threat. If you can get
Mm-hmm.
this guy in the third or fourth round, that's a great value.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy that with a really high ceiling. I love him as a prospect. I'm not sure he comes in and produces a lot right away. He's going to take some development time just because his route tree is um, minimal. But
Yeah,
that's
he started out as a quarterback.
yeah. He's still
But even
learning.
that gives you a little gimmicky opportunity, maybe.
Yeah, but his route tree is limited. He doesn't get off the line against press coverage very well. He's got parts of his game that he needs to improve and learn before he's going to be a standout, pro. But the talent is there. He just needs coaching and development time. Um,
I like him
so yeah,
actually. I mean, I would be like thrilled if Seattle was able to get him in the fourth round. And there's kind of a running back mentality to him. Like when you watch him run, he
hmm
runs like a running back, even though he's 6'5", he gets kind of low and he knows how to move. And he kind of did an option, when he was in high school, ran the option. And so he's got a lot of running ability. So,
hmm
and that kind of sets him above a few of the other prospects we've been talking about.
I like the way he gets low like that because when you're tall, you present a pretty big target for guys swiping in at the football.
Hmm.
And by getting the way he runs and the way he gets low with the ball and everything's compact when there's contact, he's not going to be a guy that fumbles. He just really isn't. And um, yeah, some of these other guys, I see a little too much ball security, or the ball's kind of out there a ways a little bit. They'll have to tone that down in the NFL. But um, yeah, I mean, he's a good prospect. I like him.
So one of the guys that I was curious about your opinion on, because he's a polarizing prospect to me, and that's Tez Johnson. Super productive at Oregon. Obviously played in big games. Was very productive. Dylan Gabriel's kind of outlet there.
Hmm.
5'10", though, 165,
Yeah.
4'3", 40, but a very slight player in every way. Like small legs, small ankles, small arms, small upper
Hmm.
body, small waist. Just you're going to get what you get with him. How do you think he fits in the NFL?
I don't know. If I'm being honest,
I don't know either.
you're right. He's going to be a polarizing prospect because if you put the size stuff out of it and you just watch, he gets open so well. His agility is crazy. His speed is there. Um,
And
the
he
guy's
gets
going to
there
get
quickly.
Yeah, he's going to get
He's twitchy.
separation and he's going to help your quarterback that way. But can he put up with a full season of hits and stuff with the NFL? Um, you know
To
that.
me, you just have to roll the dice. Like you have to just go, we're going to draft this guy. He's going to get into our offense. He immediately becomes talent wise our number 3 player. And he's a weapon. We're going to get him the ball. We're going to get him into open space. We're going to, right? And you
Mhm.
just roll the dice on all that physical stuff because that's not who he is. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. You can get hurt on any play. DK Metcalf can get hurt, right? A player nearly twice his size can get hurt on any play in the NFL. So you almost have to just throw that stuff out and take the player for who he is and use him as much as you can until the gas tank is empty.
So if I had to guess, I would say he's going to get drafted by Denver. And the reason is one,
Wow. Bo
he fits
Nix.
he fits that offense, but two, his adopted brother, Bo
Yeah.
Nix,
Wow.
is there, and I think that there's going to be a added bump
That
to
would be an
his.
ideal fit.
Yeah, in terms of their draft board. I think he's going to get a bump there that he won't get anywhere else, because of that. And honestly, and he fits that offense really well. Like if you're gonna put this guy into an offensive scheme, Sean Payton's offense would be probably the best fit for him. And so yeah, that's my prediction. I think that it makes way too much sense for it not to happen.
Interesting. A guy I haven't watched a lot of tape on, just some highlights, is Restrepo, Xavier Restrepo from Miami. 5'10",
Mm-hmm.
198. Got a pretty decent grade on him. Third, fourth round, 4.4, 5.40. Single season record with 85 catches, a little over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns for them. Good hands, intelligent player, yards after contact, reliable pass catcher, decent route running, body control. He does everything fairly well, but not any one thing really well.
Yeah. Um, it's yeah. I remember like this was a guy that I didn't actually get back to in terms of scouting. But I remember him when I was watching doing watching his quarterback, and what I saw in those was that he was just open a lot. There's a reason why he set had 85 catches in 13 games. Um, and he was just always open. And when his quarterback needed a guy to get open to move the sticks, he was always the person. Um, and so that kind of like ability to just always be there to make a play when a play is needed is something that you don't see in all of these guys. And I kind of liked that. But then you look at, kind of the athletic profile and that kind of stuff, and you're like, he is decent, but he's not going to be great. So I think there's a ceiling with him, but the floor seems really high. Like you're just going to
He
come
does
in and
offer
be.
you
I was say he's going
He
to come
does
in and be
offer you kick
productive.
return ability too.
Yeah, which the team needs.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of prospects that are going to be, pick 100 to pick 200
Oh, there's
in
so
this
many.
draft. There's
Yeah.
so many, Keith, and I don't even know where to start. Kai Felton's there at 6'2", 181, 4'6", 140 though. Jalen Noel, 5'11", 200, 445 out of Iowa State. I mean, I could just keep going. Ricky
Yeah,
White,
there's so many. This
Nevada,
show
Las
could last like
Vegas.
8 days.
Torrey Horton. I
So,
do like Torrey Horton. I will say that
mhm,
Colorado State 6'3", 185 though.
yeah.
4'4", 540. So he's got a little bit of room to add some muscle. Um, I kind of like him. Caden Prather, big body wide receiver. Pat Bryant,
What about the kid out
Deontay Thornton.
of Auburn, Keandre Lambert Smith?
I don't
Um,
I don't even know if I wrote him down. I don't know if I got that far down.
I ended up looking at him simply because I was looking at size speed combinations and was like, what the hell? He's down there quite a bit, but he's 6'1", 182, which is, on the thin side. But then, that 4.35 40 was intriguing enough that I went and had a look real quick. Good hand technique. Moved the chain. 74% of his receptions resulted in a first down, meaning he's not just getting his receptions behind the line of scrimmage on screens and a lot of the stuff that's part of today's college game.
I did
Um,
write something down about this prospect, by the way.
you did. What did you write
Yeah,
down?
I wrote he's the nephew of Super Bowl champion Cam Chancellor.
Is
Did
he
you
really?
know that? Yeah,
I did not know that he's Cam's
yeah,
nephew.
yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Um, yeah, that's that.
Not that it matters now at this point. It's fairly disconnected from but John
Hmm.
Schneider may know that information, and he could probably go to Cam and say, "Hey, what's up with this dude?"
Well, Cam's probably not the most unbiased
Yeah, but
evaluator
he
of
could give
talent
a
there.
character reference there, I would imagine.
Um, I like his speed size combination, and I think that there's a lot you could work there. But at the same time, this is a kid that's raw. There's development time that's necessary. But if it's Cam's nephew, I'd like to think that there's going to be a high character
Right.
um,
He's got
coming
a
out of that.
3.83 short shuttle, Keith.
Damn,
That's elite.
that's elite.
And it's
Um,
74% of his receptions resulted in first downs or touchdowns this
hmm.
last year. Just an interesting prospect. 6'1", 182, but 4'3", 540. I mean, you can't teach speed, man, but you can
You
teach
can't
some
teach
other
speed.
things. And if you've got the basics down, the natural ability to catch the ball, soft hands, you're decent in, character wise, you study film, you work hard, you can bring along some other things to develop into a back end of the room prospect. Your fifth, fourth wide receiver in the NFL, even fringy practice squad. There's a lot of guys like that in the NFL that get opportunities, but yeah, we'll see. He was the very last guy on my list, and I have him as a deep seventh rounder, priority restricted, unrestricted
Yeah,
free agent signing.
He's gonna be down there. Like I said, I just liked the speed and size combo, and so I was like, I'm gonna go look. Plus, it's easier to find Auburn tape than some of these other schools.
Yeah,
Um,
one of the late round guys that I wrote down that's a great height weight speed combo is Theo Wees Jr. out of Missouri, 6'2", 192 pounds with 4.42 speed. Started all the games, had 49 receptions for 682 yards, 6 touchdowns at Missouri this year. We talked about a Missouri prospect earlier in the show.
mhm.
And he's got a 13.9 yards per catch, which is a real nice figure considering that Missouri didn't push the ball down the field very much. He's got good, after catch type stuff, reliable hands, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's what I think the big takeaway for me, another one would be Rock Taylor out of Memphis. He's another player that just kind of is a physical specimen, 6'3", 215,
Yeah, he was
4'4",
just a
40.
guy I could not find tape on, because it's Memphis.
I didn't
Same
watch any
with
tape. I'm reading
Kobe.
notes now.
Same with Kobe Hudson.
Yeah.
But it's UCF, and it's like some of these smaller schools. It's like it's not readily available, and I didn't have time to go dig too deeply.
I think the overarching idea, though, is that there are still really good upside prospects that we're talking about. They're going to be fifth, sixth, seventh round guys. That if the team needs to address this in the draft, there are prospects out there that are going to be able to come in
Mm-hmm.
and have an impact right away. It's an interesting class. I found it intriguing. There's some serious upsides, guys that can certainly fill your third wide receiver role, your second wide receiver role. There's a few at the top that kind of can come in after a year and maybe be your number one, but there's not a lot of number one prospects in this draft. It's really more of a utilitarian field of prospects where you're going to get guys that come in, make your roster, play special teams, fill certain roles in the scheme. And if you're looking for a guy with certain attributes, there's plenty of those. You're on mute, Keith.
There is one name I think we might want to include on this, and he is not listed as a wide receiver in this draft. He's listed as a cornerback, but Travis Hunter out of Colorado was really a two-way player in a lot of ways, and played a lot of wide receiver. Um, I don't think that happens at the next level. I don't think he plays much on offense, but there will be people out there that are like, no, 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 he's a wide receiver. You know, you have to. He's going to be productive. 6'1", 4.40 speed, but only 185 pounds. Honestly, he's a corner. And a really, really good corner. But I don't think that they bring him onto the field offensively at the next level.
Interesting. Yeah, there's one of the players that maybe we should mention just from a locality standpoint is Kyle Williams, the player out of Washington State, 6
Mm-hmm.
foot, 186 pounds, 4'4", 640. Understand that he's showed up well, interviewed well in in the All-Star stuff postseason. Yeah, he's just a smaller kind of prospect, but moves really well. Has a nice little juke to him.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he's done well for himself. The vertical speed, the feel for soft spots in zones and so forth. He'd be a decent prospect in the later rounds.
Yeah,
And that's all I got.
That's way more than enough.
There's a ton. I mean, you could go 40 prospects deep. I think there's an opportunity to have 25 wide receivers drafted. About all the guys we talked about will get drafted,
And a few more.
and then
Yeah.
priority free agents. So it's
Well, if you
there's
say
big
25, that's 10% of the entire draft just at wide receiver.
yeah, and that's about right.
So, just to kind of give you an idea of the length of this list, I think it's going to be a little higher than that. I think it's going to be 30, 32 that get drafted, which is an impressive total. It really is. Like that might be a record for a number of wide receivers drafted. It's just a really deep pool. I think there's
Yeah,
there's only probably 3 guys that warrant first round consideration. But once you get
yeah,
into
we've seen
round
better top
2,
heavy drafts, but
yeah, once you get into round 2, round 3, man, there's just so many guys. And that's not a bad thing at
yeah,
all.
it's kind of
It's a
like the
lot of
running back.
players.
If you need a skill player on offense, this is the year
Yeah.
because it's deep. It's quality is deep.
Hmm.
So you're gonna get guys that are gonna fill good spots on your roster and play special teams. Um, we've got a really good show coming up that you really like. Interior
Yeah.
offensive line.
Oh, this is
This
gonna be
could be a
fun.
show where the viewership kind of comes up a little bit for the show because of the need. It matches the
Seattle's need.
need on
Yeah, we'll
the
see.
offensive side of the
It's
ball.
also offensive line, and guards and centers don't tend to move the needle, no matter how much I like scouting them. Um, but yeah, I mean, but the need is there. Seattle's interior offensive line has been so bad for the last 2 years, and at some point you've got to actually invest real resources into making it better, not fifth round draft picks and bringing in um a free agent that hasn't been good for 3 years because he's ancient. You've got to go put real resources into this and fix it because it held your entire team back last year.
What did John Snyder say in his recent interview on radio?
They know what their deficiencies are,
Yes, and they're going to address
and they're
them,
yeah.
and we know
um
how to address those or something like that. Yeah, yeah. So, what's your confidence level that actually happens this season? What makes this season different?
I think what makes this season different is I think when you look at the defense and you saw how good it was down the stretch, um, the last 10 games. I mean, it was a top three defense over the last 10 games. I think they realize that as a team, they're close.
And the
And
offensive
so
line was the thing that was holding them back.
it was the biggest problem was the offensive line was just bad.
And we saw
Um,
that in the Super Bowl, that the battles are won in the trenches, especially in the big
yes.
games.
Um, the Eagles dominated that game because they dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They didn't have to blitz because their defensive line, their front four, got home so many times. Um, and on the
And
other
their
side, they could,
offensive line was able to just put up a wall. That was
yeah,
it.
they were able to run the ball at will. Um, and they were able to keep their quarterback clean, whereas Kansas City couldn't, and it led to a blowout. I don't think the Eagles are that much better than the Chiefs, but the way the matchup worked out, where the Eagles won at the line of scrimmage on every play, it just
Yeah.
you can't win games if you're not winning at the line of scrimmage, and the Seahawks don't win at the line of scrimmage on offense.
I would
They
say if
just
you look
they
at the
don't.
rosters of Philadelphia and Seattle, and some might push back on this, but I think Seattle's defense is not that far away from being as good as Philadelphia's, if not already there. The
Yeah, if you
offense,
look at
however, is different.
yeah,
We've got the skill players, and I would argue Geno Smith can do all the things that Hurts can do, but
well, he's not going to run quarterback power.
he's a
Do some of
little
the
underrated. I think Geno's a little underrated. I don't think they put him out there on purpose, but
yeah, but that's what I
at
mean. Like
this
you're not
age, but the
it's
offensive line is the
is a
key
catalyst. Yeah.
common denominator that is completely askew. And Seattle needs to realign their resources to reflect the importance of how the offensive line really makes everything work on offense.
Saquon had one of the best years in NFL history at running back. Um, but he was able to get 2-3 yards down the field before contact on every play. Um, and sometimes much further than that because the offensive line was giving him, freeways to run through. And Seattle running backs never had that. They just didn't. And
Mekhi Becton is a prominent right guard opportunity free agent out there in the market. I think he would be an excellent fit
yes, he
um,
would.
out there. Maybe that's how they make that change. They go get a guy that's a Super Bowl performer on an offensive line that's one of the best in the NFL. Plug him right in, and
Hmm.
wouldn't
I'd
hurt.
like
Wouldn't hurt.
I'd love to see that because then you address one of the spots. You go spend a draft pick, maybe you're the 50th overall on the best center in the draft. Um,
And you
and
see if
you hope
Haynes develops.
I hope that one of the, young guys with new coaching and um, more time in the off season to build up that functional strength and whatnot, that they develop into a guy that you can depend on and at least fix two of the three spots.
I
I
agree.
think that you could go a long way to improving the offensive line if you go that route.
All right, let's get out of here. We're going to have that great conversation on the next show. This was a great conversation. The wide receiver class is fun to talk about. Yeah, we'll see you this next week. We'll talk about interior offensive line. We'll get to the tackle group. Then we'll turn our entire attention over to the defense. That'll be fun as well. You can find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform, on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, like, leave a comment. We'll get to those as well. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.